Welcome back to Good Morning Sri Lanka. It is a holiday Monday, and most of you folks are probably enjoying your long weekend. But we are here keeping you company, especially informing you as to what you can do for the environment, especially since tomorrow is Environmental Day.
Yeah, and throughout this week we're focusing on the issue and focusing on ways how we could be part of the solution. So when we left for the break before, we promised you that we have a Sri Lankan who's doing innovative things to help make sure that we protect the environment, especially with one of the newest hindrances that we cause to the environment, that is our electronic waste. And so it is with great privilege and a joy that I introduce to you our guest this morning is Mr. Sivahar Muthuramalingam. He is the founder of Think Green Sri Lanka, and it's very good to have him on the show, and he's going to enlighten us on what he does and why it's important for you to get involved. Good morning, Sivahar.
Good morning.
It's very good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
First of all, congratulations on the work you're doing, and we're going to go and explore it more as we have this conversation. But I believe it's very important. Now, we just read that beautiful story from Chile about what they're doing, but you're doing very similar things here in Sri Lanka.
Correct.
So, Think Green is a company that helps people and organizations reduce their environmental impact, right? In a nutshell, what you're doing, how would you want to summarize what you do?
Well, the services we do, we help the environment in three aspects. Number one, we put a stop to landfilling because electronics are made of with toxic materials, which is hazardous to our environment. And number two, by recycling, we could preserve, for example, recycling about one computer system could preserve 140 some pounds of carbon emission and preserve going to the atmosphere. For example, last year alone, we recycled over 20,000 units of CPU systems, laptops, mobile phones, etc. That's
20,000 in a year?
Yeah.
Okay.
And which is equivalent to about, we preserve about 1.5 million pounds of carbon emission preserving from the atmosphere, which is equivalent to saving over 100,000 trees. It's big numbers. And lastly, we also help from conservation of natural resources, because when you recycle electronics, you can extract like lead, mercury, copper. So why do you want to go start digging back our own mine deeper for extracting natural resources when you can preserve, when you can conserve natural resources? So these are three important aspects which we help our by doing electronic recycling.
So you talked about three main areas, and all of them are very impressive and very important. The first one you talked about was landfilling. Now, this is something that, as a country, we've got very used to. You have a bunch of junk, you just go dig a big hole and you just throw it in, or burn it or throw it in. Now, why is this wrong? As a person who's been researching into this and understanding it a little bit more than the average person, why is landfilling hazardous and why should it stop?
Very good question, actually. Reason being is, every electronics are made of a PCB. Now, the printed circuit board, they are made out of lead, mercury, cadmium. So what happens is, once it comes to end of life, we just put it to the dump yard. They get stacked up in a dump yard. And then eventually, when you try to decompose, when you try to rain, decompose, all this lead, cadmium, mercury, they go steep down to water system. And that is what we eventually will drink as we move on.
So this is far beyond just the problem with methane gas.
Exactly. So this is something which we drink. I mean, imagine lead, cadmium going straight in the water system. So that is why we say stop landfilling. That's why we try educating the awareness that we shouldn't go into landfilling.
So last year alone, you said 20,000 units of electronic waste that could have contributed to polluting our water and fountains and all these things. You helped stop that, and that's a very important aspect. And these are things that we don't really think through.
Yeah, that's true.
As a result, can be very dangerous for us. So what happens to the mobile phones that I would discard, or the dozens of CDs and the DVDs, and because so many.
There's so many things. There's so many things right now. I know a lot of companies have boxes where you can put all your discarded electronic stuff in. So what happens to these?
Correct. Well, in overseas, it's a common practice where there is a box. But in Sri Lanka, I think we're the first company, in fact, from the SAARC region itself, to have a box created by Think Green itself, where we call the ECycling Box, where we can dump all electronics into that box. So what happens is, once the electronics comes to the box, the company calls the box are full, we can't pick it up, and we segregate it. And there again, about 50 people are dependent on the job. Once it's segregated, we pack it separately. And then for different, for example, it's on a CPU system, the hard disk separately, the power supply separately, those are hazardous. And that is what we eventually ship it out for overseas recyclers to recycle it. So that's how the process happens.
Right. So now, like you said, in many countries, they do have a system where they would
Correct.
collect it. Now,
But-
how do we continue to encourage people to be a part of it? For now, you're doing your part.
Yep.
But how do people consistently do their part in this issue? Like,
Well, right now, Sri Lanka is a lot of people are getting used to it. There's a long way to go. Many companies need to get into practice. Basically, they need to have a systematic process how to dispose the e-waste. So on that is the counter, probably we can have a box in place where they can, once they fill the boxes, and they that's a process which we are trying to adapt to many organizations. And we by itself. We have given a lot of press releases, giving awarenesses. We are on the Facebook fan page as well. We educate them, as well as we go to schools, we go to many other institutions, and we educate one by one person, show how hazardous electronic waste is and what they should deal with, how should they sort it out.
okay, we have some images here. Ryan's going to show us about some of the work you're doing here.
Yes, sir. Oops.
And while she's getting ready
There we
with that, it's pretty interesting how... would you want to run us through some of these images?
This
The
is-
pictures which you see there is where one of our staffs who are deassembling a CPU unit, and that is where he's extracting, keeping up, he's trying to plug off the hard disk separately, the motherboard separately. And the other one is where we destroy the hard disk, because a lot of valuable information is contained there. That's something we do for the banks.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
for our leading bank, we did over 1,000 units of hard disk destruction, because those are valuable information. So it's not, you can just give it to someone to do whatever you're going to deal with. So we did it for a leading bank, and that's that. And
So that handles all those secret
yeah, we keep peaks.
information. Okay, there's actually a picture of how things are segregated in a company, but sadly, with my lack of technological know-how, I kind of erased that one. But this one is what was presented to you by a major company as well, right? With all their
Yes. Yeah, they did a CSR initiative. They, they went out there, about 15 branches island-wide, where they they informed everyone, okay, why don't you come and hand over the electronics for recycling? And that is that. They did the initiative by themselves. So a lot of companies have to take it by themselves. They should be corporate social responsible. They are the electronics waste generators. So they should take it a stand, okay, we generate it. It's our responsibility to ensure it doesn't go for landfilling. That's their own initiative, which they should do actually.
Okay, my question is this. I mentioned this just before we went on air. This is on major companies' way of handling what they no longer need.
Correct.
But we quite have a number of people who are into the business of importing.
Correct.
Say crate full, container full of what could be discarded or reusable stuff, say from European countries, brought to the country and resold.
Correct.
How are you going to convince them that some of them may not be worthy of bringing into the country?
Well, what happens is that in Central Environment Authority, they're working hard on this, because once a container comes in saying its label says reusable, or they call it second hand, but eventually it's not. Probably 70% or 60% is probably not working at all. So it's like a dam, they just come and dump it over land. So CEA is working on it, the Central Environment Authority is working on it, ensuring that they don't practice this quite long, but it's reducing to a great extent now. It's reducing.
But you bring a very important point there. Many countries do send their second-hand products.
Definitely, yes.
Because there is a demand for second-hand products.
Definitely.
But if most of them don't work,
Correct.
there needs to be measures to make sure
Correct.
that Sri Lanka doesn't become a dump yard for other countries.
Correct.
That's a very important work.
Yep.
Now, for you from Think Green Lanka, how much of e-waste can you handle? Now, let's just say people are watching this show, many companies are already working with you, let's say more individuals hear about you.
This is the Facebook.
You got a Facebook page and many people are following it. Now, what happens if everybody comes and puts their stuff? Like, what can you maintain?
Well,
right now?
so far we have a permit to handle over 500 tons of electronic waste. So we have the capacity to handle that much of amount. That's only with one partner, because right now we're working with, we recycle in Singapore, in Hong Kong, and Japan. So 500 metric tons a year is a big number.
And what about plans for the future with that? You want to continue to expand on that, or right now you already have a full-time staff working for this? Like in Chile, they're using former convicts. You're not using convicts, but you're using people who have no employment.
Correct.
As this becoming a...
Yeah, so this, as we move on, because what we believe is, like, Sri Lanka has changed. A lot of people now are aware of what electronics and hazardous part. So as we move on, because like last 20,000, this year we may go for about 30,000 units. So as the numbers increase, we will be giving more employment to our own countrymen.
What is your advice to those people? Because sometimes letting go of old stuff is not an easy thing to do, because you spend a lot of money. Like what you said, the fact that even if we change mobile phones every year, I'm pretty sure you have your old mobile phone or you've given it to someone. For people who been holding back on old TV sets, those gigantic monitors, those old CPUs that doesn't even run on Pentium 3. What can you tell them on what they should do?
Well, actually, as you know, technology is changing very rapidly, and they should we educate them. I think that's a key thing here. They should understand, by just lying down a computer or a mobile phone back in their houses, it's very hazardous. Even, let's say, a small kid can go start biting the old mobile phone. So those things happen. So we educate them. We talk to them individually, educate them, saying, listen, there's no point just hanging on to the old stuff. It's a better cause for a betterment for our country as well. So on education, there's a lot of people who have changed actually. A lot of people are changing, a lot of companies are changing. So we believe, we're in the correct path towards a change where a lot of people are, aware the hazardous part of all these electronics.
All right, so this is all amazing work, but my question comes down to how do you sustain this in the sense of what's your business model? The fact that it seems like you're spending a lot for a very worthy cause, but how does the model continue?
That's a good question. Reason is, since we collect all the electronics and we segregate it, as I was talking, by recycling, we extract various metal like copper, lead. So our recycling partners in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in Japan, they fund our project. They find it's very viable for them doing it, so they're supporting our cause. That's how we get the funds to run this whole entire process.
And what about the legal regulations, the mechanisms out there in the country? Do you think it's sufficient to make sure that we stop e-waste being thrown into our land like this, or do you think more regulations need to take place?
Well, right now I think the Central Environmental Authority are doing, they're working very hard, and they are doing pretty good initiatives as well. So to a certain extent, if you ask the question 2 years ago, it's tough, a lot of people didn't know what to do about it. So even today you all know, probably, Ryan has got a mobile phone at disposal, she can always call me up and say, I have a disposal, likewise. But so things are changing now. So to a certain extent, made a lot of efforts, and I think, they're doing a good job, but yet many companies have to adapt it. They're going to really work hard on this.
So Think Green Lanka is what we're talking about. If you want to know more, as we said, they do have a Facebook page called Think Green Lanka, and they also have a website which is
www.thinkgreen.lk.
thinkgreen.lk. Check it out, get involved. If your company doesn't emit their waste the proper way, get in touch with Siva and their company, Think Green, and they can help you do that. But also, Siva, just looking for the future. What are your vision? This is a very exciting idea you had. You're a businessman, that's your professional job, but this is your passion and you want to contribute to the country, that's why you're doing this. What's the future like for your company?
Well, future, we are looking at probably having a bigger processing plant in Sri Lanka. That is where, because our objective would be here is to, give more jobs to our own countrymen. That's the primary objective of the whole course. So hopefully we are working with a Japanese client who's interested in doing a big processing plant in Sri Lanka. And also, Think Green is only under Think Green, electronic recycling is only one aspect. The other aspect, we are working on other initiatives on, energy-saving products, green products, which is good for our environment as well. So that is what will future help, sustain this whole business by itself. That's the future of it.
They're encouraging.
Good stuff. So on the week that we talk about the environment and ways that we could get involved, here is an individual who had a passion, who is doing something very phenomenal, very important, and hope you can be a part of it as well, and hope you can consider doing a better job at emitting our e-waste and your e-waste.
Yes, and like what he mentioned, there's no point having this old stuff lie just around your home. There's a way of properly disposing them, although it may be hard to let go. You have to let go sometime.
Well, with that, we have to let go, Ms. Savara. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
It was an honor to have you on the show. We hope to hear more from you, and maybe someday even come to the factory and get some footage from there.
Definitely,
to see what happens.
Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Thank you for being here. Well, you're watching Good Morning Sri Lanka. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Ryan's got something interesting to talk to you about.